how do you stay focused daily and then achieve on the level you did?
So I qualified for 4 Olympic Games, competed in 3. Every single Olympics was a totally different experience, and that was one of the things that I learned early on is, whatever that experience is, you're never going to have that experience again. If you think about it, a dive takes less than 3 seconds. And in that 3 seconds is chaos. And in that chaos is your creation. When I hit my head on the board in '88 in the prelims, I was paralyzed by fear because I didn't know what my responsibility was, knowing I was HIV positive, because I was competing in a country that, had they known, I wouldn't have been able to enter the country. They had travel bans. When I hit my head on the board, it was almost like a wake-up call to say, pay attention, that it's one dive at a time, just stay focused, not on what's going to happen tomorrow or in 2 minutes. And it took all of our love, respect, and appreciation for each other to get through that.
Are you struggling to navigate life's unexpected hurdles and challenges? Do you find it hard to adjust to changes and maintain a sense of direction? Facing those inevitable life changes can often feel overwhelming and can even seem impossible at times. In today's episode, I'm joined by 4-time Olympic gold medalist Greg Louganis, who's considered by many to be the greatest diver in the history of the sport. Greg shares his insights and personal strategies for navigating life's challenges, building resilience, and finding happiness. This is Greg's second appearance on the Move Your Mind podcast. If you'd like to hear his earlier episode, you can go to number 53 to hear more about his story and insights. Welcome to Move Your Mind, where we uncover why you are holding yourself back from getting the life you want and what to do about it, with the help from high-achieving guests and experts in behavioural science, personal development, and the health and wellness space. Join us if you're ready to move out of your own way toward your ideal self. I'm your host, Nick Bracks, and I've been working in the health and wellness space for the last 15 years, helping people find direction and gain the courage to take control of their life. My mission is simple: to help you learn everything that I wish I knew so you can become your ideal self. Lacking guidance, I spent the majority of my youth feeling lost and disempowered, which led to depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, and substance abuse. Looking back, I didn't have the vocabulary to communicate what I was experiencing. And as a man, I didn't resonate with the emotional language used in traditional therapy. I didn't need to talk about my feelings. I needed tangible solutions to guide me toward building a life I was proud of. If you can relate, then this podcast is for you. In this episode, we discuss how to overcome inevitable life challenges and turn obstacles into opportunities for growth. If you're ready to take action and build a stronger mindset, then keep listening.
Greg, thank you so much for making the time to now do our second interview together. I really, really appreciate it.
Sure, my pleasure.
I've known you for a number of years. We actually had on the Move Your Mind podcast fantastic feedback. It was one of our most listened to episodes. As the listeners are going to hear in this conversation, you've got an incredible story and have achieved more in, your lifetime than a lot of people, and have more importantly, given back so much to the community and helped in, a number of causes. So yeah, I feel very lucky to be able to have you giving your time to share this message with our listeners.
Sure, my pleasure.
So we'll just jump into your story. Are you able to give a background on where you come from, your career, and how you got to where you are now?
Sure. I guess the biggest thing would be to start at the beginning. I was adopted when I spent my first 9 months in foster care, and then Peter and Frances Louganis adopted me. My biological mother was 16 when she had me, so so that was kind of a rough beginning, but fortunately the Louganises, Peter and Francis, who raised me, they had greater financial means to get me into dance classes and acrobatics and gymnastics and eventually diving. And that's kind of how I started. I started in dance and acrobatics when I was a year and a half, started performing on stage when I was 3, and I got a partner. And then she went into gymnastics. I followed her into gymnastics, loved gymnastics. It was my dream to make the Olympic team in gymnastics. And then we had a pool built in our backyard, and I started doing my gymnastic stunts off the diving board at home. And my mother didn't want me to kill myself, so she got me lessons. And the first day out to lessons, the coach asked if I would join the club team. And I said, I'd think about it. So, I wasn't really hot on diving initially, but as I grew, when I was 12, I had Osney slaughters. So I had water on the knee, which is, I guess, common for really super physically active children. And so my doctor said that I had to quit the acrobatics and dance and gymnastics, but I could continue diving. And so then that's when my diving career really shot up, because all of that energy was focused onto one discipline. And then a year later, I became world champion for my age group. And then 3 years after that, I was on my first Olympic team. And that was when I was 16. And then I won the Olympic trials in 1976 and got a silver medal in 76 on men's platform. And then 1980, we didn't go. We chose a team. I was on that team, but we didn't send the team because Soviet Union's invasion of Afghanistan, political stuff going on. And so I didn't have that opportunity. So I had to wait 4 more years to make it to another Olympic Games. And that was in Los Angeles, 1984. And I got 2 gold medals there. It was my intent that I was going to retire. I was planning on retiring after the 84 Olympic Games because I broke the record of national titles for USA Diving, and I got my Olympic gold medal. And I was planning on leaving the sport and retiring, moving on, doing something else. But what I was pushing for, I went to the president of USA Diving, and Phil Boggs, and I said, Phil, what's going on with trust funds? Because after college, you don't have any financial means to take care of yourself, to pay for your coaching, your housing, your food, any of that. But with trust funds, you'd be able to do the commercials, the endorsements, the speaking engagements, exhibitions, all of these things, and be able to draw on that money for your living and training expenses. So I was pushing for that. And when I went to Phil Boggs, I said, what's going on with trust funds? He said, well, the only one it affects is you, and you're retiring. So we don't have to spend all the cost in attorney's fees and get trust funds put into place. I said, fine, I'm not retiring. Do your homework. So my intent really was to stay eligible until trust funds were put into place. And once they were put into place, then I can, that would be my legacy, to leave to the younger divers coming up. And so it took 2 years to get it done. And I found myself at the World Championships in Madrid, and I won. And my coach, Ron O'Brien, came to me and said, well, it's just 2 years to the next Olympics. I said, okay, 2 years, I can do 2 years. But a lot happened in that 2 years, because 6 months prior to the Olympic Games, I was diagnosed HIV positive. And so it was a real terrifying time. HIV/AIDS was back during that time, 88, late 80s, early 90s. We thought of it as a death sentence. So it was a challenge that I, never dreamed of. But, I'm a firm believer you don't achieve greatness on your own. And my coach, Ron O'Brien, was there every step of the way and supported me. And so Yeah, so it was a crazy experience in 1988.
Absolutely. And I think it's such a good point. And for all of our listeners, I mean, this podcast is about entrepreneurship, well-being, how, creating a mindset for whatever endeavor you're going down. How do we learn from people like yourself that have excelled in areas? And I think it's one of the key points. You simply can't do anything on your own.
Mhm.
Every single person we look at, and I find myself doing this a lot of the time, looking at these people that I'm striving to, achieve similar things. And you're thinking, what's wrong with me? How do they do all of this? I can't find enough hours in the day. But they've got teams, they've got processes,
Yeah.
they've got, that support. So I think it's such an important point.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. And, because oftentimes we're afraid, we think that we should be able to do it all on our own, because we see individuals who are successful, and we think, oh my God, they've got it all. They're doing it all. And no, they've got, like you said, they have teams behind them, people who are supporting them and mentoring them and, uh, helping them achieve their goals.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We all only have so much bandwidth, so much energy, so much time
Right.
in a day.
Yeah.
And it can be difficult because, there's so many things pulling for our attention, so many distractions, so many things that we all, often want to do. So how do you direct that in a focused way to, best utilize your own potential?
Right. Exactly. And also, no is a complete sentence.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, and you have to, you have to express that, if it's beyond what that you have the bandwidth for. You can't people please. You really have to be mindful and be realistic, with what you can put your energy into.
I know for myself, it's probably been one of my biggest things I've constantly trying to overcome, people pleasing. Has that been an issue for you? Was it when you were competing? Is it something you've had as an issue in your life?
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, horrible people pleaser. I'm terrible. Um, I mean, because I remember a couple years ago, because like, okay, when you're an Olympian, you're an Olympic gold medalist, then people say, oh, they're making up stories about you, with just what they perceive and the assumptions that they make. So they make so many assumptions and say, oh, well, you did this, so you have to want to do this. And I followed that for the longest time. And it's like, oh, well, you went to drama school, so you've got to pursue your acting. Then you should have to do this. You need to do that. You need to, and they're telling you everything that you should be doing, and they're telling you how you feel about it too. On top of that, say, oh, you're going to love this. I know this is, this is really what you want to do. But they make those assumptions. But a couple of years ago, my manager says, well, what do you want? What does Greg Louganis want? And I was like, holy crap. I mean, it took like 2 weeks meditating of trying to figure, okay, what is important to me? What is coming up for me? What are things that that really light me up? And, the two things that kept coming up was the dogs, my dogs, and health and wellness. It's like, oh, okay. So that's what's important to me. But you kind of can get into a rut of listening to other people and then having other people define who you are and and be telling you your own story.
Absolutely.
And you can get caught up in that very easily because everybody has an opinion.
It's such a good point, and it takes a lot of strength of character and evaluation, like you said, to pull yourself away and think, hang on, what do I actually want? Where do I want to direct my time? And I think you can't really do it unless you do remove a lot of other opinions, because like you're saying, I mean, everyone's got an opinion and everyone's going to tell you not, and often most of the time not because they're actually trying to harm you, but they're just speaking from their own belief. But the dangerous thing is we can have these people around us that we're getting advice on situations that are very very nuanced and very unique to our own life, that very few people are going to have a better understanding than we do. So you want to be very selective about it. So I think it's an important topic, because I think it's one of the biggest issues we face in the modern world with all of the, information overload and social media and everything.
Yeah, because we have so much noise happening and constant. It's 24/7 because Instagram, Twitter, all of the socials, that's 24 hours. They're just waking up in Australia as we're going to bed, right?
Yeah.
So it's constant and it's global. So then you have those expectations, beliefs that kind of ruminate about who you are, and people trying to define who you are.
Yeah. Never ending.
Gee, come here.
We've got
my dog's going to start barking at the other dog.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Because, hey, G, come here. Come see. G, come here.
We've got a special guest. What?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. What sort of dog? That's beautiful.
This is G.
G,
just the letter G.
Yeah.
And it's short for Gerard.
And what breed is Gerard?
He's a Hungarian Pumi.
So cute. Yeah. He looks a little bit. We've got a schnoodle at the family home in Australia. So looks a little bit of that like schnauzeri poodle sort of look, but yeah. Dogs are the best. I think the best mental health thing you can do is get a dog.
Oh, for sure. For sure. It's, because he travels with me. He goes pretty much everywhere with me. And I've got the other dog, a Pyrenean Shepherd. But he's the one who stays with me. And it's great. I mean, it really helps, because, I experienced social anxiety. And it's like, which is challenging when you're at events and people are expecting things of you. And it's like, oh, and he's with me, then I can always, he grounds me, because he gets me out of my own head about thinking what the situation is, who's around and all that. It's like, oh, I have to take care of him.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of having that thing to care for, and they're unconditional and all of that sort of thing. But I find that, so comforting and interesting, because I have the same thing, and so many people do, with social anxiety and all those sort of, things that come up in everyday life. But, hearing from someone like you, charismatic, well-spoken, someone that has been very prominent in the public eye, you just would never think that someone like yourself would have that issue.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because, I kind of grew up in the public eye too. But it's just not who I am innately. I'm really shy. And so, having to do these things, events, there are certain things that are expected of me, and of course I want to deliver.
Yeah.
And be conscientious about that, but also, to take care of myself as well. That I'm, because sometimes, like, I'll do an event, and depending, or speaking engagement, that's something that I can really relate to, is like some of the topics can be really challenging, whether it is talking about domestic violence, whether it's talking about bullying. You visit those places in your life when you're speaking, that you have to take time for yourself and recover.
Yes.
And so a lot of times, depending on, what the topic of the speech is that I'm giving, in a particular series or something, I need some time to like decompress, to kind of let go of that stuff. No, those are places that I visit. I don't live there anymore, but I have to remind myself I don't live there anymore.
Yeah. It's very important, it's
Yeah.
if you, and I had a similar thing when I was on the speaking circuit in Australia doing, I think 1 year, 150 of them. And I had to completely, I just got burnt out. It messed with my head. And you realize, hang on, what am I actually doing here? I'm standing up, bearing my soul, telling my story, to, things that people often might do not even once a year with their therapist. So
Yeah.
you do have to be so conscious about that. You got to put yourself first and do it in a way that's manageable for your own well-being, and with everything else in life as well, because you get burnt out otherwise.
Right. I mean, it's like, like with the Olympic Games. Did you see The Weight of Gold with Michael
Uh,
Phelps and that documentary?
I know the one you're referring to. I've been
Yeah.
meaning to see that. I haven't watched it
Yeah.
yet. Yeah.
Yeah. David Budaya was in there, and he said, well, somebody told me about the post-Olympic blues. Well, that person was me.
Yeah.
Because I warned him. I said, after the Olympic Games, I mean, that's a high. It's something that you work towards. You either get there or you don't. You're either successful or you're not. But ultimately, there's a valley afterwards. Because that's just the nature of things. You're really high highs. You have really low lows.
And do
And
you get addicted to that from, that being such a prominent part of your life, I guess, from being a kid into your, 20s as a very successful athlete? From my perspective, it would be almost impossible not to get addicted to it.
yeah, I mean, that's the reason why, I mean, you have so many, elite athletes, who have issues with addiction, because it really is compulsion. It's a compulsive behavior, to get to that level, and to an elite level is very compulsive. And so, that's kind of, you've practiced it and it's familiar. So, that's, it's a difficult issue,
I
because
can only
then
imagine.
what do you exchange one addiction for another?
Mm, mm.
You
It
know?
would be a very tough transition. And the addiction part aside, it's sort of, that's been your identity your whole life. That's what you're identifying as. Your if you're, fortunate enough and resilient enough to reach the levels that you've reached the top of this thing. So then you're thinking, okay, where do I go from here? Even
Right.
removing the addiction, how do I now channel, what's my next endeavor? Because we need to, keep striving for new things. So that must be such a difficult thing for so many athletes.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and everybody, I don't care who you are, if you're Michael Phelps or, Michael's been very open about that, talking about all of those things, which has been wonderful. It's given a lot of other athletes permission to address those things and examine them in their own lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's pretty powerful hearing, someone the biggest gold medal winner in history, or whatever he's, I don't know what the number is, but hearing this guy come out and talk about, even after achieving all of this, he was suicidal and had all these problems. Like, wow, and it humanizes it, and it genuinely helps, because I think at the end of the day, it's like what I was saying before about you sharing with, the social anxiety. We just all want to feel that we're not alone, that, we all deal with these similar issues in our own different ways, and we're all the same. And there's so much comfort in that. And it helps us to sort of try and manage it on a day-to-day basis and find a way forward.
Yeah. And the important thing is asking for help.
Yeah.
And giving you the confidence to ask for help. Because like if somebody like Michael Phelps or myself or whomever are open and honest about all of those things, those challenges, it gives other people permission to seek help as well.
Yeah, it's really important, and it goes a huge way. So if we circle back to when you were competing, how in that period when you were going for the second Olympics, you had the HIV diagnosis, how did you actually, I mean, I know you told me you had the support, but how did you stay focused? And I mean, that is a huge amount to deal with. There must have been so much pressure, confusion, just so many different emotions. How do you stay focused daily and then achieve on the level you did, going through all of that?
Well, okay, so I qualified for 4 Olympic Games, competed in 3. Every single Olympics was a totally different experience, and that was one of the things that I learned early on is, whatever that experience is, you're never going to have that experience again. If you think about it, a dive takes less than 3 seconds. And in that 3 seconds is chaos. And in that chaos is your creation. And so, I mean, that is, I mean, that's taking it to the smallest degree. Not quite the smallest degree, but I mean, to a very, very small degree, to encompass the entire 1988 Olympic Games, because I had 3-meter springboard and 10-meter platform. And basically it's one dive at a time. You're executing one dive at a time. I'm not a competitor, I'm a performer. So it was all about the performance. So I knew that if my performance was on, then everything else would take care of itself. But when I hit my head on the board in '88 in the prelims, I mean, I said in my book, Breaking the Surface, that I was paralyzed by fear because I didn't know what my responsibility was, knowing I was HIV positive. When you hit your head on the board, I did get a little cut on the top of my head, where my head impacted on the diving board. There was no blood in the pool or anything like that. I mean, what a lot of reporters say, because when you have an injury like that, it takes a while to, because their adrenaline's running, everything's tight. And once you, take a breath and you're relaxing your body, then it started bleeding. But I mean, there was so much stuff surrounding that, but my fear was what my responsibility was at that moment in time, because I was competing in a country that, had they known, I wouldn't have been able to enter the country. They had travel bans at that time. And so it was a very guarded secret. But what I looked to in that moment was Ryan White, who was a friend of mine, a young boy who was a hemophiliac, contracted HIV through his clotting factor. He fought for the rights for kids living with HIV/AIDS. their right to education, to be able to go to school. And he was a fighter, so I knew I had to find the fighter in me. And so Ryan, to me, at that moment in time, was my inspiration to get back on the board and fight. And so, and then it was almost like when I hit my head on the board, it was almost like a wake-up call to my coach, Ron O'Brien, and myself, because my coach had a whole lot of stuff going on too. His mother had a stroke and was in a coma. He wasn't sure if he was staying. She ultimately died during the Olympics.
Wow.
And so he was distracted. I was distracted with the whole HIV thing. So there was so much going on in that moment in time. When I hit my head on the board, it was almost like a wake-up call to both of us to say, pay attention, that it's one dive at a time, just stay focused, not on what's going to happen tomorrow or in 2 minutes. We had to be present. And so that really, and it took everything that we had. I had been diving with Ron O'Brien for 10 years. He was my coach for 10 years. And it took all of our love, respect, and appreciation for each other to get through that. Because it was really a coming together.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, please click the subscribe button, leave a like or comment, share with your friends, and follow me on Instagram at nickbracks. I really appreciate your ongoing support.
Yeah, I mean, it's just such a difficult thing to do, to be able to put yourself in such a present state and block everything else out. And I think, again, if we relate it to the modern world, most of us can't, sit still for 2 seconds without looking at a phone or doing something. So it's just,
right.
Under all that pressure, it's just such a difficult thing. But yeah, I think it's there's so much in what you just said there. And I guess, do you feel like what you were saying with, being in that present moment, the pressure, all of those things, that's where the creativity is sort of bred from, because when you get into that state, that allows you to really perform and have that ability?
Well, okay, in any athletic or performance, even in dance, acrobatics, acting, all of that, performance is right brain.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very right brain. And I'm a very right brain dominant person. Like when, if my balance is a little off on the board, then oftentimes I'm not thinking judgment, angle, I'm forward, I'm backwards. It's not that. It's a change of rhythm. Okay. I'm feeling this, so I need to change the rhythm to that.
Yes.
Because then you stay in your right brain and you're able to execute, instantaneous adjustments in order to be successful within that less than three second window.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that makes definitely a lot of sense.
Because if you go to your left brain, by the time it goes back to your right brain, you're in the water. It's done. It's over.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've got, and that's so, because it's hard to get your head around how you can deal with that kind of pressure where you're training for 4 years all day, every day, and it's distilled down to 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Like, just how the hell do you deal with that? Because just the very thought of that would be just monumental. The knowledge, so you almost have to just let it all go. But that, I can't get my head around
what,
it.
Nick, you can interpret it as monumental, but you can also interpret it as freeing.
Right.
Because it's over in less than a breath.
Mm.
You know?
Yeah. So it's a language that you
It's
feed to yourself.
right. Yeah. Yeah. It's the interpretation, the meaning that you give something.
Mm.
You know, and that's so much how we respond to the world, you know, is what meaning do we give it? What importance does it have? And so then that's what either propels us forward or holds us back.
Yeah. Yeah. And has that been something that you've been able to use in other parts of your life?
I have. I've been very successful in certain things and not so successful in others, you know? It's just like we get good at what we practice. So if it's something that I practiced as a diver, you know, in diving, I get it. You know, in performing on stage, I get it. You know, when it comes to making money and millions, no, I don't get it. I wish I did.
It's the opposite part of the brain, isn't it? It's that's the whole left part.
Just, oh my God.
Yeah. You're a natural performer.
Yeah. Oh wow.
It's so true. It's so true. It's yeah. I love that. So I guess moving forward from that all really started for you a path of being an ambassador, a spokesperson for HIV and a number of issues. How important has that been to you? And, you know, what did you learn through doing that?
Well, you know, it's been, you know, I never wanted to be the poster boy for HIV/AIDS, you know, but I am a face, recognizable face. Now, HIV/AIDS is not what we used to think of it back in the late 80s, early 90s, or in the 80s and 90s. It's totally different. You know, there's a different attitude surrounding it. Trying to, you know, to address the stigma that used to be attached to it. I don't think there's quite as much stigma, but, you know, just as mental health too, you know, being a stigma, you know, surrounding mental health. So it's different. Now, because I was diagnosed in 88, you know, I don't know how long I was positive before that, or when I was exposed, and it really doesn't matter. But at that time, being diagnosed in 1988, I was told generally what the thought was, is I had 2 years. And I honestly didn't think I would see my 30th birthday.
My God.
I didn't think I would see 30. And, you know, and I've had my challenges. And then, you know, when I turned 40, I was like, shit, I got to get a job. I'm like, you know, I don't know how long I'm going to be here, you know, and now at 63, you know, it's just like, it's almost like the story has evolved and is continuing to evolve. And so with that, you know, you have to, you know, make those adjustments. And, you know, and like I was saying about the meaning that you give things. You know, now if you get a diagnosis of, if you seroconvert and you get a diagnosis of HIV, it doesn't have the same meaning as it did then. So it's just evolving. But, you know, probably the hardest thing for me has been, you know, really that I am still here. Because I didn't expect that. I didn't, you know, it's like, well, I don't know what, you know, future, you know, so I wasn't thinking future. And so now it's like, well, shoot, I got to figure some things out.
That's crazy. Yeah. And
Isn't
I
it
can't,
crazy? Yeah.
it's so crazy. The mindset. So you really just accepted and came to terms with that mindset that I'm not going to have a future. I've got 2 years left.
Right.
And then sort of,
Yeah.
so that whole, so you had to deal with the double whammy of, coming out of the competing in sport, finding, what your identity is, but also on top of that you just, didn't even think that you were going to be alive.
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
it's just, a crazy adjustment.
Yeah. Yeah. It is crazy.
And
And then
yeah,
changing that narrative and trying to figure out, okay, well, what do I want to do? That was the question. What does Greg want?
yeah,
Now that makes that question even that much more important
yeah.
to me.
And would you say your definition of success has changed over time through everything you've been through?
Yeah, I mean, that is definition of success. Um, it, definition of success and truth. And it's interesting because we think truth is, there's nothing else. But truth is actually a moving target because it depends on your belief. Because your truths, your beliefs, a belief is just a thought. And if you have more information which changes those thoughts, then you have to change your beliefs.
Yeah.
So then, success is ultimately a moving target. It's like, what does success today mean?
It's such a good point. It really is, because I find we can get so attached to that truth that we had. Well, I find this has happened for me so often. I'm attached to an emotion that I felt about what I thought I wanted 20 years ago, but I can't seem to intellectualize that. No, that's separate the two, that's not actually what I want now, but you're still so attached to that feeling, that emotion, but you've got to allow it to change. You got to realize, no, I'm a different person. I've had other experiences. I've learned other information. I don't want the same thing now, but it's really hard to let go.
Yeah, because it's almost like, that, comfortable pair of jeans or that, that favorite t-shirt, it's just like, oh, you just don't want to throw it away, because it's just
Exactly.
so comfortable. And it's like, okay, no, it's tattered. It's time to go. There's stains everywhere. It's give it its blessing and let it go. But a lot of times it's hard. And then if we see it just sitting on top of the trash, then we go and snap it before the trash man comes, It's just like we're rescuing, those things oftentimes. And a lot of times we're not even conscious that we're doing it.
Yeah. 100%. Letting go is the key thing, isn't it? We've just got to learn to let go of things and be more open to things, but it's easier said than done.
Yeah. I mean, and you know what? The best medicine, laugh at it.
Yeah.
If you can laugh at yourself, laugh at the situation, then shoot, you can get through anything.
It's so easy to take life too seriously, isn't it? We can get
Right.
caught up in our own ego and lose context on, situations. And I think laughing and just, having fun, reminding yourself that we don't have to, very few things in life are so, there are certain things that are very important, but a lot of things, they come and go, and it's not the end of the world.
Right.
So you mentioned near the beginning that you had that period not long ago where you sort of went and assessed, what does Greg want? What do you really want? Can you talk, just before we'll go into these 5 closing questions to finish up after this, that I'll see how they compare to the ones we did with you a
Okay.
year and a
Yeah.
half
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but before we go into that, can you just like dive a little deeper into what is that path now that you're going down, and what did you discover that you're wanting to put your time into?
Well, the things that came up that kept coming up for me was the dogs, and I compete in dog agility. So I'm, really into the dogs, into behavior, into health and wellness, dog agility. Those dogs are athletes, and you have to
Yeah.
care for them, with massage and acupuncture and, their diet, all of these things, hydration, all of these things that you're concerned about. Health and wellness. I continue with my yoga practice. That's been a mainstay of mine. It's meditation and motion. Yoga is that's what it is for me. And but that whole health and wellness, and along the lines of more holistic and natural remedies, rather than big pharma, the drugs and that sort of thing, to kind of get away from that. It has its time and place and its curatives and all that, but my tendency is to lean towards a more natural healing, because I think that's just the natural state of the human body, is health. So finding that and maintaining that balance.
Well, you're doing something right, because at 63, you're looking pretty good. You're looking very fit and healthy. So it must be
Well,
working.
thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm working at I just recently added boxing. I used to do kickboxing in Malibu with Joey Escobar, and I found another studio to go boxing on Wednesdays and Friday nights, and so I've been enjoying that. It's good.
That's Yeah, I was thinking of getting into that, actually, because I want to find
Yeah.
something that, like, we at this age, I'm 36 now, and running and things like that, I get sore knees, but I want something, you can get a bit competitive with, or just have that challenge
Hmm.
that you can do, at any age. So that sounds
Yeah. Yeah. I
fun.
mean, I've been having fun with it.
Yeah, that's great. Oh, well, thank you for sharing all of this, Greg. And we're going to go into these questions now. And like I said, the first time I interviewed you, I have so much respect for what you did, from my little understanding of being on Celebrity Splash in Australia when you were the judge. And I did a belly whacker, as we would call it in Australia, trying to do
Yeah.
your dive on live TV.
Yeah.
Made a fool of myself, but I learned this is, I mean, I don't even know how you do it. It's crazy. And I don't know how you come back after hitting your head on that and still have the confidence to do it, because I had that fear without even having an accident, that, there's this slab of concrete underneath you, and the whole thing. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. We had fun though. That was
We
a
did.
lot of fun. Yeah.
It definitely was. All right. So these final questions. The first one is, what's the best childhood memory that comes to mind for you?
Best childhood memory that comes to me. Really strange. I don't know why, but fishing on my grandparents, with my granddad. They had a pond on their property. They had like 300 plus acres in Texas, Mount Pleasant, Texas. And there was a pond, and we'd go fishing there. And I don't know why I just thought of that, but
Yeah.
yeah, that just
I love
popped
those
up.
memories. I love those kind of
Yeah,
memories. So yeah, that's
yeah.
great. What do you think's the biggest burden currently on mental health in society?
Biggest burden, I think, because of the quarantine, people have gotten accustomed to, or used to, isolating, and just connecting through social media and not face to face.
It's a big issue. I think it's a
Yeah.
huge issue. Yeah, and it's scary because seems to only be getting more extreme.
Right. Yeah, because of social media and all that. I mean, I remember when the quarantine happened, I was so grateful for the app Clubhouse.
Mm.
And so I met some people, and we would just be on the Clubhouse app, open a room, and we'd fall asleep together.
Yeah.
There's somebody in New York, and there's people in the UK. There's people, and we fall asleep together. Just have that some sort of connection. But the whole face-to-face connecting, touching, all that, I think that is, I think that a lot of humanity has suffered from that.
We just simply can't replace it. It's a core need that we all have. We're social animals. We're meant to be in communities. We're not meant to be just, the screens are great. It helps us do a lot of things, and it's, but it's not the same. It's just not the same. If we were sitting right now in person doing this interview, it would feel more connected. It still does feel connected, but it's not, it's just never exactly the same as, you can't replace being in person, can you?
Right. Yeah.
What would you say is your personal definition of happiness?
My personal definition of happiness is just, gratitude in whatever I'm doing, be grateful for, being outside on the balcony, and, or out walking in nature.
Yeah.
Those are the things that, really make me happy. And, and seeing my dogs play and having fun. That makes me happy. Yeah.
And it's funny whenever we think about, what makes us happy. It's the things that are readily available to all of us that, we can tap into. It's the things, the in-between moments, all of that side of things. And if we just step back and be grateful, we realize, well, life's pretty good. And there's a lot of things to be grateful for, like you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are you most afraid of?
Well, I'm not afraid of death. I mean, if I were to go tomorrow, I would, have absolutely no regret.
Yeah, that's great.
So I think as long as you are open, honest, and authentic with your friendships, that you don't allow things to go unsaid.
Yeah.
And so with that comes a peace. If everything was taken away from you in that moment in time, you'd have no regret. As long as you live your life that way, then you should have, there should be no fear in death.
That's beautiful
because when I was talking to a friend of mine before he passed, he had cancer, stage 4. And I asked him, I said, are you scared? Are you afraid? Or what are you afraid of? He said, he said that he was afraid of the pain, but his doctors were managing his pain well. And I said, other than that, he said, I've said everything that I wanted to say to everybody that I care about. So yeah, I guess I'm not so scared. And, if we're right with ourselves, if we're right with the world, then there really shouldn't be anything that we should be afraid of. Because everything's just temporary. everything, whether it's our life, whether it's discomfort, stomach ache, it'll go away. A headache, it'll go away. All of those things are temporary.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I mean, it's so true, but it's something that, you have to be very evolved to have the view you have. And I can tell you, I'm certainly not there yet. I'm still terrified of death.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
I try and be as open and honest with all my friends and all that side, but
Yeah.
I'm just terrified of the, what comes after, or it all being over and all that kind of thing. But I'm still well on my journey to try and learn more and become more evolved.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I don't know. I think it's going to be an incredible adventure.
Yeah.
It's
a great way to look at it. Yeah. No, really beautiful answer, and appreciate you being so, like last time, so always so open and generous with your answers and your time. Final question, actually. What are you most proud of?
What am I most proud of? I've said this before. I said my book, Breaking the Surface, because people came to me on my book tour and said, "You saved my life. You helped me come out to my family or friends about my sexual identity or my HIV status or whatever." It gave people strength, and that's making a difference. And so I think that's all we're wanting to do in this life, is to make a difference, and that difference can be to one individual.
Yeah.
That difference can be to a child, a puppy. It can be anything. You can make a difference in so many ways and have an impact. And I think those are the things that I'm proud of.
Yeah. Because what's more important, and if everyone had that view, imagine what the world would be like if we all just had that value system of how can we just make any form of difference and make that, the main purpose of whatever, field we're in or whatever we're doing. The world would just be so different.
Yeah, it's what my mother taught me from very young. Make everywhere you go better because you were there.
I love that. That's
beautiful.
beautiful.
And it can be, and when I talk to kids, I say, it can be as much as picking up a piece of trash, being kind to Mother Earth. It can be, smiling at somebody at the grocery store. And you don't know what's going on in their life. You may just have saved their lives, because you saw them, you acknowledged them, and you smiled at them.
And the interesting part about it is it also makes us feel amazing. When you do that,
right.
It's one of the best things you can do for your own well-being. So it's a win-win, really.
Yeah. It happens all the time. Because oftentimes, I'm, maybe having some aches and pains and I'm not feeling really good. And, and then I go out and, see somebody at the grocery store and I smile at them and they smile back. And it's like, oh my God, that felt really, really good. And, a lot of those other aches and pains are just, they're not that important anymore.
Exactly. I love that. Well, yeah, thank you again. Where can the listeners go to learn more about you? Where should we send them?
Well, you can go to greglouganis.com. That's my website, or at Greg Louganis is my social on Instagram, Twitter, and I think I'm still on TikTok. I don't know. I don't always keep up with those things. Well, Facebook. Yeah.
We'll make sure to include all the links in the show notes. So So please check them all out. And Greg, thank you again. I greatly appreciate your time. Always love connecting with you. You're an amazing person and feel very fortunate, like I said, to be able to have these conversations with you. So thank you again.
Well, I appreciate you. You're incredible.
Thank you, Greg Louganis, for joining me today and offering your insights. And thank you for listening. I'd love to hear about your thoughts on the episode and any suggestions for topics you'd like to hear about. Feel free to leave a comment or send a DM. Your feedback is always appreciated. Please don't forget to click the subscribe button, leave a like or comment, share with your friends, and follow me on Instagram. It really makes a difference. Thank you so much.